Okay, so hi everyone. This is Caitlin, also known as Grass-Fed Girl, on the podcast today. The podcast is The Heart of Health, and we are going to be asking Caitlin a few questions just to find out a little bit more about what she's experienced on her health journey. And yeah, take it away, Joanna.
Okay, so the first question I had was, so you went from paleo to keto and then carnivore, and I know a lot of people do that. It almost seems like the natural progression. So, what benefits did you see going from like paleo to keto and then carnivore in terms of your health?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's so great to be here. And yes, it's been a long journey. I started doing paleo in about 2010 when I was really sick with Hashimoto's disease. I had very low energy, and I was a personal trainer, so I was used to having good energy. And my digestion went really poorly. It was very slow, and that's a symptom of low thyroid and Hashimoto's. So I was interested in paleo because I heard it would lower your inflammation and, take out foods that you were maybe sensitive to. So I did that. And the biggest thing it helped me with was my blood sugar, because I'd always been very hangry, always needing to carry a, a little snack bar in my bag. And, coming from the world of personal training, I was always doing the 6 meals a day and carrying my containers. And so I was really thinking I had to eat that many times in order to get my blood sugar under control. And so when I did paleo, I was like, oh my gosh, I could eat 3 meals. If they have some fat and protein in them, I can actually go 2 or 3 hours without eating. So I was shocked by that. And it was really amazing. So that was the biggest thing, I think, was just being able to have a few hours peace from my hunger and everything. So I was just so excited about that. I need to straighten. This is loose. Okay. So I was just so excited about that. And I just kept noticing that I was overeating nut butters and fruit and stuff. And I think I was very carb addicted. I just really wanted the carbs. So I noticed the more I reduced my carbs, I felt better. So I couldn't, if I ate sweet potatoes, I wanted like to eat another sweet potato after I ate the first one. Or I was learning to cook really well. So I was able to make things really tasty. And so I was just like, okay, I think the carbs have always been an issue for me. I grew up as a dieting a lot with my parents. We were always going to Weight Watchers. So I kind of knew that I had food issues all along. And I thought I had like a personality problem or something, but I think I was just very sensitive to carbs and sugar. And so I always thought, why can't I be like everybody else and just eat one bite of, a Snickers bar or something, or Pringles or something like that, like these really tasty chips that we have here. And but then when I realized that, it's not really my personality, I was just eating the wrong foods for me. And when I started eating fat and protein every meal and reducing my carbs, I started just to feel more and more and more calm about food. And then I learned about low carb and keto, and I met a lot of people in keto. And I kept just doing that, and it just kept feeling right. But I was still having tons of problems with my digestion. So I didn't know what to do about that. And finally, in 2018, my friend Vivica from the Nourished Caveman, she told me, just do 30 days of carnivore. I think it'll help your digestion, because I was always bloated, and I had to like take a lot of magnesium and stuff. And I thought, well, okay, 30 days I can do. I mean, of course I was very resistant and I waited like 2 or 3 months before I started. But then I said, okay, I can do 30 days. And she was kind of helping me. I was messaging her and stuff. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But then at the end of 30 days, I think I had a little easier time than some people, because I was already kind of low carb, but I did feel pretty bad that first week. And then after 30 days, it just clicked. And I was like, well, I'm not stopping, because this is the best I felt ever since I started getting sick. I mean, I dropped within the first month, I think I dropped 10 pounds, and I was just feeling amazing. And I was so calm around food. I mean, I was eating 2 meals a day rather than 3 meals. And I was just so excited, because it was the best I felt in my digestion. It didn't start going better, except the bloating was gone. Like the moment I stopped eating broccoli and cauliflower and, you know, salads and all this stuff, I just like my stomach just, you know, flattened out more. And it was just amazing. Like I used to have, like, you know, my fingers would swell up and everything, just from eating all those vegetables, those low carb, you know, healthy vegetables. And then as soon as I stopped eating them, I felt so much better. And I had better digestion. Like I used to always get heartburn, especially at night. And as soon as I cut the vegetables, that went away. And so I was just like sold, and I just kept wanting to do it. And I just kept doing it. And it's been, in October, it'll be 4 years.
Wow.
Sure. I can definitely relate to that story. I studied human movement science at the University of Pretoria, and all they taught you was food pyramid, you know, and like have lots of meals a day. And so everyone would ask me, oh, you studying human movement science, what should I eat? And I'm like, oh, okay, if you want to lose weight, you got to eat these regular meals, you know, try boost your metabolism, you know, have whole wheat, whole grains and all those things. And, you know, it's part of that industry is promoting this like really grain-based diet. And you know, you're not supposed to have too much meat, and like too much saturated fat is going to make you gain weight. And like, so I started with that whole paradigm, and I also had very, very slow digestion. And going to carnivore, I also went from paleo to keto. So it definitely helps being fat adapted before you go carnivore. And I think if you also maybe tapered your fiber, you wouldn't have such a bad first week of carnivore. But definitely after the first month of carnivore, I was like, nope, this is the solution.
I think I mean, of course I knew about it, but on keto, I think I was never low carb enough, because I was eating a lot of vegetables, that I needed the electrolytes. But then once I did carnivore, I was like, okay, I really need to learn about these electrolytes and be serious about them. I think that was one thing, you know, maybe I was missing the first month or so, was I didn't take it seriously enough that I needed the electrolytes. And then now I take them 2-3 times a day, and it helps so much, because I get actually cramps, especially now that I'm breastfeeding. I've been breastfeeding for 19 months. So I will get like cramps in my foot. My foot will go like this if I don't have enough. If, you know, feels like a Charlie horse. I don't know if you call it that, but that's what we call it. I get them in my foot, or even in my ribs. Sometimes I get like a cramp, and then I'm like, okay, I need more electrolytes.
Yeah, the electrolytes make a huge difference for us as well. We try to get a lot of it in.
Yeah, and especially when you've been having so many carbs, as soon as you start losing that water, your electrolytes just go with them, with the
Yes.
water.
Yes.
So I think a lot of people make that mistake of like, oh, I'll just eat meat, and then suddenly they're full of cramps and they're feeling a little bit low in energy. And I definitely like the recommendation for electrolytes.
Especially when people don't salt their meat enough. That can also have an effect.
Probably still afraid, you know. And I mean, you can always, there's a lot of controversy in carnivore if you should stop using salt and all this stuff. But I think that's something, maybe an advanced technique for later on. Once you've been doing it a while, you can experiment with no salt or whatever. But when you're first starting out, you definitely need as much salt and I mean, of course, salt is an electrolyte, but you know, some people can get away with just salt, like sea salt or Redmond salt, but I think some people really need that combination with the, I mean, I use the Redmond electrolytes, and they work really well for me. So that's a brand I use.
Yeah, you also need the potassium, the calcium, the magnesium to get a full electrolyte combination.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I think you could get in spring water. But a lot of people don't get spring water. They'll get still or filtered water. And so then it's often depleting those natural minerals. So I think if you're drinking spring water, maybe the electrolytes might not be as important, but not a lot of people get good spring water.
Yeah, most people are drinking city water, so they have to add stuff to it to make it. Right.
Yes. So one thing I was curious about, while you were pregnant, you were 99% carnivore. Did people give you a hard time about your diet while pregnant?
Well, as a doctor, I went to in our city, we have a group of midwives that work within the hospital. So they work with the doctors, and so that's who I saw the whole time was the midwives, and they're a little more open-minded, and they're more they want you to try to have a natural birth as much as they can, and also, you know, not intervene. So they were a little more open-minded, but I really didn't go into it. I just would say, you know, I'm low carb, or I'm eating mostly protein or something. You know, I mean, you know, there's ways to say it that, and, you know, it's need to know information, because I know that what I'm doing is safe for me, and I know I'm getting the best things for my baby and everything, but they don't know that. And so it scares them. And so I think just, you know, stick to the words like low carb, or, you know, I'm prioritizing protein or something along those lines. And, you know, they don't need to know every single thing about it, because they're not nutrition professionals. You know, they think, especially doctors are given this halo of knowing everything, but they really don't. They don't study nutrition in medical school. So, you know, if you feel confident in what you're doing, then I think just have to be sure of what you're, you know, with your own, be true to yourself. And then, you know, if you're not sure, I would go outside of the doctor and get some nutrition counseling or something with a practitioner that you trust. But I make sure you would, I supplemented with folate just to be on the safe side. I took in the actual folate, not the folic acid. So make sure and do that. That was really the only thing I felt like maybe I wanted to supplement. It was summertime when I was pregnant, most of it. So I got a lot of sun. So I felt okay about the vitamin D. And we were just talking about I refused the drink, the sugar drink, to test my blood sugar. And I did my own testing at home for 2 weeks with 4 times a day of testing my blood sugar. And it was always within very low, and it always stayed in a very tight range. So then I knew that I was not experiencing any, you know, pre-gestational diabetes. So I was like, I'm feeling confident with what I'm doing. And I knew that, you know, I wasn't eating all these anti-nutrients that, you know, were maybe blocking my absorption of these wonderful foods like butter and eggs and fish and meat and seafood, you know, shellfish. And I did also take liver pills a lot, almost, I think, you know, for several months, maybe I definitely took liver pills because I was just like, you know, I know liver has all the stuff that it's like nature's multivitamin. So I took that too. And that was just made me feel a little more confident that I was getting everything. And then when I saw my baby, it was just like, oh my gosh, you know, he's so perfect. I was just like, okay, I did it right. Phew.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that sounds like a recipe for a healthy baby. Liver and meat and no anti-nutrients.
We were just a little bit unlucky that the families involved with being at the nurse, our UNA's aunt is a nurse at the gynecologist, so it makes it really a little bit tricky to separate the diet because the aunt knows exactly what's being eaten. And so it's hard to try and use different language, because then at the family gathering, you kind of have to explain, we're just eating meat. And then they freak out a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, the first month I was doing the lion diet because it was World Carnivore Month in January. So it was just beef and lamb. And so that was quite interesting. And then I added fruit in after that. But what we found interesting is I know so many women who, when they were pregnant, they were just eating junk food, basically only eating carbs, living on crackers and sodas, and hardly having any protein and fat, and no one had a problem with their diets at the time. But then you
No.
eat a diet that's only meat and fruit, and that's bad suddenly. So I thought that was quite funny.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a special situation, but I think generally most people don't have relatives at the gynecologist. So, and you know, maybe around your family too, just like, I don't like if I see of course my parents know how I eat, and my sister eats very similar to the way I do. So they're used to us crazies eating like that. No, they have to have a lot of meat and stuff for us. And but you know, with my extended family, I don't really talk about it that much, because it's like I don't want to fight with them and I don't want to hear what they have to say. And you know, so I don't really bring it up, and it's better that way, I think.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, most of our friends, they're so used to the way we eat, like nobody talks about it anymore. It's just kind of accepted. My parents as well. Like we often take our own food when we go and visit, and we just enjoy the time with them, and that's been good at least. So,
That's
how
good.
do you think being carnivore helped you during your pregnancy?
Well, I mean, I'm not a small person, and I think that, you know, people who are really I mean, and then especially I gained 50 pounds when I was pregnant. So, you know, people, when you're larger, you get treated like crap, you know, in the medical setting. And so, um, you know, I think that if I had started to show signs of diabetes, you know, gestational diabetes, I would have, you know, been treated more harshly and assumed things. I mean, people already assume things, but then if you did have more signs of, I mean, of course, I'm from the South, so everyone is obese and sick, but you know, people assume that you're unhealthy if you're larger, and you know, I wasn't unhealthy at all. I mean, I'm not young either. So, you know, having those two things against me, you know, but I knew inside that I am healthy and I'm doing everything right. And so it just helped me to be confident in these, because you're dealing with different people all the time, and they're asking you this and asking you that. And so knowing that I didn't have anything really wrong with me, it gave me a lot of confidence going through the process. And you know, that's intangible, but literally I was healthy and my baby was healthy and everything. And I was able to go to 40 weeks in one day. I didn't get induced. When you're a little older, a lot of the talk is induction. And I didn't want that, because I felt like whatever happens with your body needs to happen, because those things that are turning on, those processes, they're, you know, millions of years old. They need to happen. You know, you can't just take one drug. And I mean, I don't believe that you can just take one drug and then everything's supposed to happen starts to happen, you know. So I felt like I really wanted to let my body go into labor naturally, and I was lucky that I did. And I felt like that really helped me, and I didn't get induced. And at the end I was like, they wanted to just every day, every week they wanted to check and do an ultrasound, which I was fine with, because then once they checked the ultrasound, they said, okay, well, everything's fine, so we'll let you go another week or another day or whatever. And so that was good. And they just worked with me. I think if you just talk and if you know stuff, and I read a lot of stuff. I mean, I read Sally Fallon's book on child, I don't know what it's called, but something about children. And that one's really good. She wrote that with Dr. Tom Cowan, and that's a physician from San Francisco. And so that one was very reassuring to me. Also, Mama Natural's book was really good. It was like step by step, week by week. It was really good. And so, if you read stuff, then that what they're going to say ahead of time, and then how to respond. So that helped a lot. And I ended up having C-section anyway, but just not having to be induced, because I had a friend who's actually way younger than me, and she got induced, and it sounded so horrible. She had a very bad time at the hospital. Even worse than, I didn't have a bad time other than having to be induced. Not having to have a C-section, but she had a bad time. And so I was just so glad that I let my body go into labor naturally and experience that. And I did push for like over 24 hours. It was, very intense, but then they decided that, it was getting to where there was some risk factors coming up. My heartbeat, I think my heartbeat was very fast. So they were just worried about, when you're in labor a long time, then the placenta can start to fail and stuff. So they were just like, do you want to really go further? And I was just like, okay, I've had enough. I can't do this. If there's risks coming up, I was just like getting to the point where I was done with the risk. So I just wanted to see my baby, and it was and within 20 minutes, it was amazing. They have you in and out, and you're holding your baby, and you're like, whoa, this is crazy. Of course, I'd been there for 24 hours, but
yeah,
hindsight's 2020.
Yeah. That sounds quite traumatic. Such a long labor.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointed that I had to do all that and then do the C-section. But yeah, you never know until you never know what's going to happen. And I had a doula and everything, and she was very. I brought my own doula, which I think everyone should do. And they even have like programs for people like with low incomes and stuff that you can like get a volunteer doula and stuff. But she was very natural minded. So, and she said, you know what, you've done everything you can. So it's okay now. Just let it go. And I was like, okay, let's just let go and, let go of my ideas about everything. And then I just the need to have the baby here safe and everything. So.
Yeah, I think it's good to not get too attached to a birth plan, because I think a lot of women, they're so set on, no, it has to happen this way. And then if it doesn't, that can affect you emotionally. But if you go in with an open mind, like, okay, if they have to do an emergency C-section, that's okay. Like, I'm still going to try natural, but I'm still open to things changing. I think that's a better mindset to have going into it.
Well, you have to be willing to change, yeah, and just go with whatever pops up. You don't know how long, they were just, I was having no progress. And so, and I got to 10 centimeters and there was no progress. So I was just like, okay, well, I don't know, and I was so exhausted by then. It was just like, it's almost like it was like a movie with torture or something. You're just like, no more.
Sounds like a marathon.
Yeah.
Ultra marathon.
Yeah. But having your doula there, somebody because you meet them ahead of time. I would definitely do that. It wasn't really that expensive, and having that peace of mind that it wasn't somebody from the hospital pressuring me, that was great. And it was during COVID, so that allowed me to have an extra person. So I did have my husband, but of course he doesn't know what the heck's going on. It was great to hold my hand and stuff, but
Speak of the devil.
But he wasn't, knowing what's happening. So definitely if you can have a doula, it's very helpful. And then, yeah, that let me have an extra person that I knew there. So that was good. Of course, all the nurses, but they were wonderful. And they really, really, really encouraged me to push and do everything I could natural. And so, but at the end of the day, it's hard to have a C-section, but you get over it eventually. After about a year, you're like, okay, it's all right.
Well, for me, I just think there's no good way for the baby to exit your body, whether it's natural birth or or like a C-section. Both have their own side effects. So like obviously, natural birth, you get the pain, you don't know how long it's going to be. You could be in labor for 24 hours. And then with C-section, obviously they have to cut you open. The epidural freaks me out a little bit. Somebody putting a needle in your spine. But
So
yeah.
I had that. I had the epidural too, because along the way they were like, well, if you get epidural, then you can push for a couple more hours. So I was like, okay, I guess I will, because I still wanted to have that natural birth. But it was so weird. I mean, you don't feel anything, especially after you've been doing it natural for a long time. You feel nothing, and they're like, okay, push, and you're like, what? I mean, I don't feel my leg anything, so it's like, they're like, yeah, you're doing great. I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't feel anything. I mean, it feels like a cartoon or something. You're just like, what? So I mean, you don't feel the needle. I didn't feel anything as far as, I mean, you don't feel any pain whatsoever, but it didn't feel like I could effectively use my body though. So that was like the weird thing. I was just like, I don't feel like I can participate in this process now. Like I feel paralyzed, so I don't know what this does anything, but whatever.
Must be such an interesting feeling. And then I also wanted to know about breastfeeding and your diet. Like, how do you think the carnivore diet influenced your milk supply? Because I just hear so many women where their milk just dries up after the first few weeks. And I often wonder if that's diet related. And so I was wondering if you noticed any things with your diet and how that affected your milk supply with breastfeeding.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I just think that, doing the prenatal nutrition, for several years is so important. And then I do think that maybe it's an electrolyte problem. I mean, there's so much stress around the birth and stuff. So, and breastfeeding, just like, I mean, I feel like it'd probably be in the, there's certain sets of things in your body that have to happen. Like your heart has to beat, you have to go to the bathroom, you have to digest your food. These are the things but then there's a lot of things that don't have to happen, like sex drive or your hair growing, or those are not survival things. And I would assume breastfeeding it's not a survival thing for the woman. Maybe of course it is for the child, but so maybe that's something that your body just cuts off, because it's like, we are so stressed, so we're not gonna support that function right now. And because that's what your body does. That's why your hair falls out or your skin messes up, or because you have a priority of just keeping yourself alive. And so non-essential functions will just stop. And that's why maybe you feel like you have no sex drive or something like that. But for me, I didn't have any problem whatsoever. Your milk doesn't come in right away. So it took about 5 days. But you do get this colostrum. You really can't even see it. So you almost have to just believe in it. It's almost like a fairy tale or something. So they said, oh, he's getting that. Okay, whatever. I believe you, I guess. I don't see anything. All of a sudden it comes in and you're like, whoa. But they gave me the pump, and they brought it to the room, and they were, the one lady nurse was very, very pushy. She was like, you need to pump now. and I was exhausted, and I was like, oh, leave me alone. Oh. And then she said, you need to pump right now. It was like the middle of the night. And I was like, what are you talking about? Leave me alone. But she was very pushy, and she brought the thing. It was like a rolling pump, and it had like, you could personalize the stuff you put on yourself. Like those were disposable, but the pump thing was, rolled around on a stand, and she was like helping me, and she was like, pump, 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 you have to pump. So I was like, okay, whatever. And that was the key, doing that right away. And then I was just like drowning in milk after a few days. It was crazy. I was just like, I mean, it was insane. And I do think electrolytes are a big thing, though. I think some people are so dehydrated. I mean, I drank so much water. I had cases of water sitting around my chair, like my rocking chairs and everything, because you have to have so much water to get that milk going and everything. So I think it's probably a case of dehydration. People are just out to lunch. They don't think about that. And I was, of course, salting my food and eating really good. My husband was cooking for me, and I was eating like goat yogurt, and because that was like an easy like thing you can eat out of the container, and I was eating a lot of scrambled eggs. And so, yeah, I think people maybe they're just dehydrated, and also their nutrition is poor, because I mean, you're so tired. So like, again, you could be eating pizza and chicken nuggets, and if your body's not getting good nutrition, maybe it just dries up. So, and of course with the stress factor too.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I did some research, I read that you need to eat enough fat because your body needs fat to be able to produce proper breast milk, and then also you need enough fat on your body. And I guess that's also in case you're not eating enough fat. So I think with the carnivore diet, if you're eating enough fat, that should also help quite a lot.
Anyway, I wasn't super concerned about carbs right then at the beginning, because I was so just exhausted. So I was eating more dairy and things that are higher in carbs, and I was eating berries and stuff when I first came home from the hospital. But over time, I tapered that down after I got stabilized, because I was still eating, carnivore-ish, but I was just needing to just eat easy foods. And but I still kept the eggs and all that stuff, but the berries were kind of helpful for my mental health.
Makes sense. Yeah. I don't know if I could do strict carnivore for very long periods of time. Like I do like being more carnivore-ish, like having a little bit of fruit or just that breathing room. So I think I'll probably cycle between going strict carnivore and then also adding things in like berries. And then you also cycle.
Yeah, I feel it's quite natural to try go with the seasons and not be so stuck on just one way.
Yeah.
It was still summertime then, because I had him on September 5th, and we have really long summers, and so it was still very hot. It was like 100 degrees when we came home from the hospital. So it was pretty crazy.
Yes. At least the sun helps with vitamin D then. Because I was worried about having my baby in winter and then thinking, oh, then you're not going to be able to give your baby some vitamin D if you go for a walk in the sun or something like that. So I think that's very beneficial. I'm due in the spring where it starts to really get warmer. So that's quite good.
Oh, that's good. So next year? No.
No, this year, September.
It's Southern Hemisphere, so our spring is your autumn.
Yeah.
I was like, huh?
Yeah, that's often funny. Jonathan has this idea where, how World Carnivore Month is in January, where he feels in the Southern Hemisphere it should be around July because then it's winter time here and then it's more seasonally appropriate. where you don't get as much fruit and stuff growing naturally, and then being strict carnivore would be better.
Yeah, so you should have the Northern Hemisphere World Carnivore Month and then the Southern Hemisphere World Carnivore Month.
Well, you should start that. You need your own like Sean Baker down there.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, at least we have Tim Noakes in South Africa, but yeah, he speaks more about keto than carnivore. I know he's open to that, but
Yeah, he started being more carnivore.
yeah, maybe he can do it.
Yeah, there you
Or
go.
we can do it.
Yeah, we can do it. And then after your baby, obviously the first while, I'm sure you weren't too worried about weight, but what do you think helped you lose some of the baby weight afterwards? Because I know you're pretty close to what you were before.
Well, I mean, I've lost the same weight like 3 times since I had the baby. I mean, I think really I think maybe I thought about it too much at first, and I was too worried about it because I thought I'm so healthy and this will be easy and I'll just, jump right back into it. But I think maybe I put too much pressure on myself at first. I mean, not at first, but even the first year. I think you should just give yourself like a whole year of just don't think about that, because it's not healthy to push yourself. I mean, do eat right and eat meat and, eat all the right things for carnivore, and even keto if you want to is good. But you don't need this mental pressure, because the most important thing is your baby gaining weight and getting healthy, and you're not going to be sleeping well most of the time at all. So my baby still struggles with sleep because we're still breastfeeding, and he'll do really good for a few days, and then he'll have a teething thing or something. And so it's like, if I don't sleep, then my appetite is messed up, and then I'm very hungry, or I'm just stressed, and so I'll want to eat something that I'm not supposed to eat or whatever. So you just have to give yourself a lot of grace and wiggle room and stuff. Of course, you're gonna feel best if you eat the more carnivore-ish diet. So I always remember that and stick with it. But for me, I think because my autoimmune is pretty strong, like my problems are pretty big with autoimmunity, or at least my food sensitivities. So I'm very sensitive to dairy and maybe even egg whites. I found I will bloat up if I eat egg whites, and especially if you do those recipes with the breads and here they sell these wraps that are made out of egg whites. And so if I start eating that kind of stuff, I can really get just not feeling well. And so dairy is I gain a lot of weight if I eat dairy. Unfortunately, less so with goat dairy, as I mentioned, but really I feel best with no dairy. And so it's kind of depressing. But I've had to just get really strict, almost do the lion diet basically. But I didn't really do that until the second year, because I didn't feel strong enough, to really be that regimented. So this year I've been doing more all beef months. I've done 3 all beef months.
Nice.
And I'll do lamb too. And then, but I'm not adding butter or ghee, even ghee. I just don't add. But you have to be mentally prepared for it. So you can't just do that out of the gate, like I said. So I'm doing it lately because I feel like I want to do it and I want to feel my best. And so I've been doing the all beef months, not back to back. Like I'll do 1 month and then I'll take a month off and then I'll do another month. But yeah, I'm getting close to where I was before I got pregnant, which was a really healthy weight for me. And but again, I'm just, if it happens, it happens, whatever, it's still breastfeeding. I'm still not sleeping well. So, I have to just, if I have an off day or whatever, it's like, whatever, because I'm not training for a competition or anything. It's just me wanting to feel my best. And so you just have to give yourself a lot of leeway and grace.
Yes.
And follow your intuition.
Yeah. I think especially if you're not getting proper sleep, you have to have realistic expectations, because sleep is so crucial for your health. And like you said, your appetite would be higher if you didn't get enough sleep, and that's probably because your ghrelin levels are higher.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I think you did really well.
Thank you. I think then when you don't sleep, absolutely, you're more hungry, and then you might make bad choices because, I don't like to say bad. I'm not into this guilt. Not like, it's just, you might make choices that are not gonna stall your progress or whatever. But then, you can always, I think when I do a month of all beef or something, it helps because I'm like, okay, I know it's over soon. So if I want more variety, like, so I did an all beef month in March, and that worked well. And then, meaning I lost the weight. And then in April, so still April, right? Yeah.
Just.
And then I introduced different proteins like seafood and chicken and stuff. And that was just give me more variety. So that was better. It's easier to eat with my family and friends and stuff, and go out to eat when you're eating, because if you're eating all beef, it's difficult to find the right things all the time. And like McDonald's doesn't serve hamburgers until like 10:30 or 11. So you're like, what am I going to have before that, or something like that. So then when I can eat chicken wings, for example, I went to lunch yesterday with my stepmom for Mother's Day, and I was like, okay, I can have the chicken wings, and it's like a treat, so that was really good that you can have more variety. I think I have learned that's what the carnivore diet, I think, teaches you. You have more, your triggers. Like I've learned that the egg whites don't work for me, especially in excess. Like I can eat a couple eggs, in whole form, but if I eat, egg white bread, which is 20 egg whites or something, then I'm going to be all messed up, So learning those triggers, I think that's why the carnivore diet is so powerful, because you're like, okay, I don't do well with that. And, but I seem okay with chicken and fish and those things, but maybe I don't do well adding a bunch of butter to my food, You see that, or you add it to your coffee, and then you think, well, everybody else is doing it. But then you're like, well, maybe that doesn't work. That doesn't work best for me, or eating a lot of cheese on top of things, or eating, making things with cream cheese. I mean, it's, in keto, there's so much cheese on everything, and everything's like cheese chips. And, so learning that that's really, if you want to lose weight, that is not going to help.
No, I definitely think carnivore is the ultimate elimination diet. Like it just teaches you so much, and you can really identify your trigger foods and what doesn't agree with your body.
Yeah, I like the fact that there's so few variables. I mean, your normal standard diet, you just look at one thing you buy from the store and the list of ingredients, just the number of variables of things that could be causing an issue is just too much for the average person to try and work with, where when you just simplify things, go on a carnivore diet, you've got so many less things that could be causing an issue, and it makes it much easier to pinpoint exactly what's causing the problems.
Yeah.
And spices, I think for some people are really sensitive to spices. It doesn't seem to do much to me. I've taken them out, I put them back. It seems like, especially when I'm eating with my family, they like spices. So my husband loves spices too. So it's like I can eat, seems like I'm okay with like paprika, garlic, cumin. But I don't eat onions, for example. Like I'll eat maybe an onion powder or a garlic powder. Seems like okay, but then not eating like a real pepper, but eating, chili flakes or something is okay.
That's interesting. Yeah, maybe something with the processing happens where suddenly it's easier for you to digest. So I know a lot of people on carnivore still include spices and they seem to be fine. We haven't really experimented with spices.
No,
And
I quite, yeah, obviously when you're cooking for yourself and you don't have anyone else that's wanting spice, or then salt seems to be good enough for me. But I definitely feel like a lot of the spices that we get in South Africa, they get a lot of fillers in them. So if you're getting nice, clean spices where it's just this or just that, it's also better. Where here we'll get a lot of soy and gluten and other stuff that you look on the ingredients of the spices that people use on their stuff. And so I think it's more a South African thing where
I
a
mean,
lot
we
of the
have
spices are contaminated.
absolutely. I mean, here they put, especially if you're doing like meat rubs or things like that, where there's 5, 6, 10 things in one jar, they'll have sunflower oil or some kind of preservatives and things like, but I don't use the mixes. I mean, of course there are some organic companies and stuff that sell the mixes that are okay, but I mostly just use, garlic, paprika, cumin, not a big, it's not something where it's like steak seasoning blend, I don't use that because you don't know what's in it and it's too many ingredients to even read.
I'd
Yeah, I
rather make
agree.
your own blends if you're going to do that. Yeah. And for us, carnivore is really interesting. We actually started the day after our wedding, which is almost 4 years ago. And so literally the day after our wedding, we decided, okay, we're gonna do a month of carnivore. But we ate so much pork and chicken in that time. But
Uh,
ever since then, we just switched to using salt on our meat, and we just never went back to spices.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things where we didn't realize that the meat itself actually tastes really good and the salt just enhances that flavor.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I always thought you had to put a bunch of different stuff on steak, for example, but you really don't have to. I mean, in a hamburger, same thing. You just need salt and it tastes so good. Especially, I think, I mean, you guys are younger, but I grew up in the low fat time when everything was, so I was, the only ground beef I ever got was like the leanest ground beef. So I was like, it tastes, once you have fat in it, you're like, oh wow, this tastes so much better than what I bought. Or you had ground turkey or something horrible like that.
Yes. Yeah, we also grew up in the low fat era. Like some of my family members, they still really struggle with the idea that fat is good for you and they just buy like low fat everything. But I feel like, yeah, if you go low fat, you have to add a lot more spices because I grew up using a lot of spices in foods and then now, if somebody gives me a piece of meat that they've spiced like properly, it's almost overwhelming sometimes with the amount of spices that people use. And then you forget that's how we used to eat normally, and that was what we were used to. And now, since we've been only using salt for almost 4 years, it is quite a difference.
Yeah, it's not like I'm completely against spices. It's just, it's also simplified the shopping. You go, you get the salt, you get the meat, you go home. Quite enjoyed that
Yes.
aspect.
Or now we
Oh,
get the salt, the meat, the fruits, and then we go home.
Yeah.
and you're learning also about uh I mean, I'm married to a chef and so
Very nice.
he's how to cook and so I use a lot of spices because of him and but you also learn about good salts. Like I didn't use, well, before I went paleo and stuff, I didn't know how important, good salt was. And then you learn that different salts have different flavor profiles and things, and you really start to enjoy different salts and from different parts of the world and stuff like that. So I think that's kind of fun on carnivore.
Mm.
Yes.
So did your husband help you with your cookbooks then?
Oh
With like
yeah.
advice?
The one that we have about Mediterranean paleo cooking, that one is really his inspiration.
Oh,
So
nice.
learned to cook from him and I wanted to cook things that he liked. And so that's when we wrote that one. And that was really the first time I started learning how to cook was from him. And he was in culinary school in San Francisco at the time. And So I learned how to cook, and it was great because I was able to learn how to, it was really a self-care thing. I didn't know, all I knew was like vegetables in a bag in a microwave, it was like, that was so horrible. It's like, I was so preoccupied with dieting, just what can I eat for this amount of calories or this amount of points. And then, but actually learning how to cook and take care of myself and learn about different flavors. And, a lot of the things that he makes, he's from North Africa. So a lot of the things are soups and stews. And so learning about broth and cooking things on the bone and things that went along with my ancestral diet, was really interesting. It wasn't just cooking, a can of mushroom soup with some rice and chicken breast, like actually using the meat, that the flavor that comes out of the meat was a really eye-opening thing.
Oh, that's really good.
Especially on the bone. As soon as it's on the bone, the flavor is just amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Oh, that must have helped while you were pregnant. Well, because what I found in my first trimester when I had was nauseated and had food aversions, I didn't want to cook. So then he ended up doing all of the cooking. And even now I'll crave something and I'm like, oh, I'm craving lamb ribs. And then he'll show up at home with this big rack of lamb and he'll cook it on the fire for me. And it helps to have a husband that cooks and that is willing to do it for you.
So yeah, I love going to, I like his mindset and even going to visit his country because it's very meat based. Everything is around the meat and around the fire and the cooking. So it's like a refreshing thing from here where everything's like trying to move away from the meat, so you go there, it's like, well, this is how people have eaten for, since that's how we came up. So
Yes.
Yeah, in this country we have a restaurant chain called Shisanyama, which literally means hot meat, and it's like the most popular restaurant amongst the certain cultures here in South Africa. And so the funny thing is, like, when you translate it, it's literally hot meat.
And we have a lot of our gatherings, they're centered around meat. Like usually for us, if we get together with family or friends, we'll have a braai, which is like our word for barbecue. And it's always on the fire. It's like you're going to have a very hard time getting most of this country to go plant-based because we just like bond over cooking meat. And, like how you guys have beef jerky, like we have biltong, which we believe is superior. And I know in like the States and so you can get biltong in other countries now too, but it's like one of our like traditional foods. And so we end up eating that a lot. And it's a very easy country to be carnivore in actually. And the meat's not that expensive. So we're quite lucky. Yeah.
And you pay more for grain finished.
Well, not here.
Yeah, here the grass fed is the cheap meat.
It is more affordable. It's harder to get, but it is more affordable.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're quite lucky with that.
That sounds great. I'm ready to go.
Yes.
Yeah, and the dollar is obviously way more superior to the rand. So
oh yeah, it would be quite
it
would be quite a cheap holiday. Like I think people from the States would come here and see the meat prices and just be amazed. Just go crazy.
As soon as you could get the plane ticket, yeah. After you pay for that, then it'd be a cheap trip.
Yes. No, it's quite cool. So what is your son's diet like? Because I know in my family, they're already panicking about our child. And they say like, oh, the child's going to be socially isolated. What are you going to do at birthday parties? What are they going to eat? And then I just laugh because baby's not even born yet. But what does your son eat and how do you approach social situations and stuff like that?
Well, at home, he eats, I didn't do any food until 6 months, which I think is best. There's no reason to really introduce it earlier. Because I think if the earlier, you might run into food sensitivities. And he did seem to react to dairy. So but he could tolerate goat milk. So it sounds just like his mother. And so I would give him some goat cheese or goat milk, but only after, like I said, 6 months. And so he did get rash of, like, it looked like eczema on his back if I gave him any kind of cow cheese. So that would really only be the thing when other people would want to give him a piece of cheese or something. And I'd be like, oh, you can't, please don't give him cheese. Cause I was still trying to figure it out, what are the triggers and everything. And then I did find a local farmer that makes the A2 milk, with the A2 cows, and he can drink that. So I was very glad to find that, because I was hoping that maybe if I gave him that, he would, because he's a very big nurser. So I was like, maybe it'll take some of the pressure off me. And but it didn't work. But he'll drink the milk, and he loves the milk, and it doesn't give him the rash. So I was like, this is a win. And at least he has something to drink. And I do make him the Relight, the Redmond Relight drink, the lemonade, the lemon lime. He'll drink that too. I try to stay away from, I'm not doing like super low. He is pretty low carb, but I'm not really focusing on it. He doesn't have health issues. He's not sick. So he's very healthy, very, very, he's in the 90, percentile. He's very large for not fat. He's like muscle. You pick him up, he's like a sandbag. He's very solid. He's 32 pounds, and he's 20 months. In like 5 days, he'll be 20 months. So he's very on the good range of everything. But, I didn't want to approach it like as if he's some sick child, because he's not. So really that thing with but it seems less now. Like if he has a little bite of cheese or something now, he doesn't react like that. Now, if I gave him a lot, he might still, I don't know, because he's, a little older now. But I try to give him, I always prioritize the protein, give him the meat first, because that's what I want him to fill up on. And then he loves blueberries and raspberries and blackberries. Because that's what I've always given him. And so he doesn't even really like other fruits. Like he will eat banana, but I don't buy him a lot. But again, I always try to give the protein first and I mix the butter in, or he does seem okay with butter. So I'll give him like grass-fed butter. So usually he eats eggs in the morning, and then, he just eats what we eat. So he loves steak. And he loves hamburger. So whenever we have that, he eats that first, and then I give him his berries. And then like, if we're out somewhere, I might give him like some kind of, if he's fussy, I might get, like yesterday, I gave him a Perfect Bar. I don't know if you have those, but they're not that, they have honey, they have peanut butter, and they have chocolate chips. They're not that low carb or anything, but it's a whole food based bar, but it's not actually perfect. Meat is perfect, but I will give him something like that. Or he ate some like paleo, he's more paleo-ish, I would say. Like I would give him, like yesterday he had these, we were in the Ross, and it's like a TJ Maxx, and they had these like tapioca looking chips or something, and he was fussing. Like I gave him those at the register. It's like, I'm a normal mom, they fuss and stuff. And so I try to give him healthier snacks, and if we're away from home or something. But, again, I always want to have him an ancestral approach, paleo approach, not completely dairy free. I want to give him the dairy that he can tolerate. I know that's the only thing I don't like about paleo. People think it's completely dairy free. Well, like, if he can tolerate fermented yogurt or something, then I want him to have it, so, mostly he's eating eggs, berries, meat. That's like 90% of what he's eating, but then if we're out or something, or if he was with other kids, you ask about social situations. We're going to, my sister's having her birthday party for her son today. And I know they're having beef hot dogs as like the main meat thing. So I actually picked them out and I got the best looking hot dogs that I could get, and so I know he can eat that. And then, if he gets a bite of this or that, I have tested him eating a piece of, small amounts of bread or something. So I know he doesn't have a reaction. I know if he a little bit of something, he's okay. He's not going to have a bad reaction. I've tested, you have to test peanuts, honey, as things that you have to be careful of. So you have to introduce them at the right times. But I saw that and he seems fine. So, I'm not going to stress about it too much because I know his diet at home and most of the time is really good. And I, try to keep the carbs in check. Like yesterday he had it's organic juice box, but I mixed it with like half water so that he didn't have the whole thing at one time, because I don't want him to have these big blood sugar spikes, or like, if I give him a banana, I'll try to give him half the banana and with his eggs so that he has that, both things together. So
yeah, I think that's a much better diet than like 99% of the kids out there. Like, sounds like a really great diet for a kid. And I always think, like, people complain about the terrible twos, and you're getting closer to the 2-year mark, and the kids will have so much energy, they'll have these outbursts, they'll cry a lot, and sometimes I wonder how much sugar are they eating and how that's affecting things, and how much better things would be if the kids were on more of a paleo, lower sugar diet, not sugar free or like low carb, like, yes, give them fruits and stuff like that. But with the amounts of sugar that so many kids are consuming, I often wonder how much better it would be for the kids and the parents if the kids just went to more of a diet like your child is on. So I remember.
I wonder, and then colorings, there's a big thing in the 70s and 80s. This guy, I can't remember his name right now, but he did a lot of studies on food colorings. And, most kids are getting so much food colorings, and they did studies, and as soon as a kid had the food coloring, they would start acting crazy and, have more of a reaction to the food coloring. So he was the first person to really point out this, and it's in every processed food,
Oh, I also recently watched a video where Michaela Peterson was talking about her daughter, who also mainly eats like meat and vegetables and fruits, and she doesn't have those kinds of problems with her child. And she was crediting the diet there as well. Like, she doesn't have like excess energy. Just
my baby has tons of energy. He wears me out, and we'll see. I don't know. We haven't gotten over to that. He hasn't really started doing tantrums and stuff yet. So I don't know. I cross my fingers, but I know it can't hurt to have a good diet. It doesn't mean you're not going to be perfect, but.
Well, I can remember even when I was in my teens being grumpy when you hit a sugar low. So I think it's even worse when you're 2.
Yes.
It was terribly. I used to just eat. All I ate was cereal, I think, for 10 years or something. Like, how can you not be depressed when you're a teenager and all you eat is cereal?
Yes. Well, I found that sometimes I'll feel anxious because I do have anxiety sometimes. And then I realize, oh, it's just low blood sugar. And then I'll eat something and suddenly I don't feel anxious anymore. So that's usually the first thing I check. And that just makes you think like how much blood sugar and stuff like that can affect the way you feel emotionally and mentally. And yeah, I didn't think you'd have those problems.
We hope you won't.
We're just big kids, we're just as sensitive as children or babies are. We just are trained not to be in touch with it, so my mom's watching the baby, so I better go check on them.
Okay. But thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview today. We're really grateful.
And great to meet you, and good luck with everything in your podcast and the baby and the pregnancy. And don't let me scare you, don't let people tell you things like, your experience is totally your own. And, just set yourself up right with the right support and, get I think one thing that people need to do is postpartum support, rather than just, we have all this emphasis on the baby shower and what are you going to do for the room and all this crap. And that's not the important thing. The most important thing is set up somebody to come and hold the baby for 2 hours every day when you first come home, because you guys are not going to be sleeping. Like my stepmom came and she held the baby for an hour or 2 hours every day for the first like 2 weeks. And, help, because then I could sleep, because I had been up all night, so I would go take a nap and she would tell me, go take a nap now. Like she wouldn't let me sit there and chit chat, And so that was because my baby for 3 months, I had to hold him 24 hours a day. He did not want to be set down. And, of course, every baby's different, but he wanted that touch. And so setting it up beforehand, because, you need to have your family and friends helping you out as much as you can. Having somebody come to do the dishes or something like that is so important. And don't feel like you have to entertain people or any of that crap. Like you don't set up your boundaries and everything beforehand. It's so important, because especially, because I had the surgery and everything, I really needed people who understood and, weren't expecting me to entertain them or anything like that. So, I know you guys will get it all together beforehand and have a good experience. So, and you're young and healthy, so it'll go great.
Yeah, I'm
Thanks.
sure it will. And yeah, that's great advice. I'm lucky my mother-in-law, so his parents, they live like super close to our house, like less than a mile. And his mom's like, she'll be over eager to help. So I'll definitely get that support
Take
throughout the
advantage
day.
of that.
Yes. And my grandmother's also going to be helping, and my mom. So I think we'll be fine. It's obviously going to be a challenge and an adjustment, but I'm quite excited and I think reasonably well prepared.
That's great. Well, it's great to meet you guys.
You
And
too.
touch. All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.